The Hunting School Girls.
Once upon a time, in a quiet town in Nigeria, there was a boarding school called Greenfield Academy. This school was known for its strict rules and high fences. Among the students were two girls named Emma and Sarah. They were best friends and always got into trouble together. Emma and Sarah were very curious and loved to explore. They were also very mischievous. One day, they discovered an old hidden room in the school. Inside the room, they found a beautiful but strange gown. It was made of dark shining fabric and had mysterious symbols all over it. Emma and Sarah decided to form a secret cult called the Secret Gang Cult. So one night, they decided to sneak out of the school to go for clubbing. They waited until everyone was asleep. Then they wore the gown. Then quietly climbed out of their beds. They tiptoed to the back of the school and jumped over the tall fence and go to a nearby club where they could dance, smoke, and have fun. At first, it was exciting and fun. They felt free and adventurous. But soon, strange things started to happen. Every time they wore the gown, they felt a cold chill run down their spines. They started hearing whispers and seeing shadows move in the corners of their eyes. One night, after they returned from the club, they noticed that the gown was glowing faintly in the dark. Emma tried to take it off, but it stuck to her skin like glue. Sarah helped her and they finally managed to remove it, but they were both scared. The next day, they found strange marks on their arms. The symbols on the gown had somehow transferred onto their skin. They decided to stop wearing the gown, but the whispers and shadows did not stop. They even started hearing footsteps following them at night. Emma and Sarah were terrified, but they couldn't tell anyone. They feared they would get into trouble for sneaking out. They tried to burn the gown, but it wouldn't catch fire. They buried it, but it somehow found its way back into their room the next day. Days turned into weeks, and the hunting grew worse. They barely slept, and when they did, they had horrible nightmares. One night, they saw a figure in their room. It was a tall shadow figure with glowing eyes wearing the gown. The figure pointed at them and whispered in a cold horror voice, "You took what was mine, now you must pay." Emma and Sarah screamed, but no one heard them. The figure disappeared, but the fear remained. They knew they had to do something before it was too late. Emma and Sarah were desperate. They needed help, but don't know who to trust. They decided to speak to Reverend Sister Margaret, one of the strictest and most feared nuns at Greenfield Academy. She had a reputation for being harsh, but the girls hoped she could help them. One evening, they knocked on Sister Margaret's door. Trembling with fear, she opened the door, her thin face looking down at them. "What do you want?" she asked sharply. "We need your help, sister," Emma said, her voice shaking. "We found an old gown, and now strange things are happening to us." Sister Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Come in," she said, her voice cold. The girls entered her dimly light room, and she closed the door behind them. "Show me this gown," she demanded. Emma and Sarah took the gown out of their bag and handed it to her. As soon as she touched it, her eyes glowed with a strange light. A smile spread across her face. "Foolish girls," she hissed. "Do you know what you have done? This gown belongs to an ancient spirit, and now you are cursed." The girls stepped back in horror. "Please help us," Sarah pleaded. Sister Margaret laughed, a cold horror sound that sent chills down their spines. "There is no escape for you. You will suffer as others have before you." Suddenly, the room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move closer. Sister Margaret's form began to change. Her eyes glowed brighter, and her skin turned a ghost pale. The girls realized too late that she was an agent of the evil spirit. "You are mine now," she whispered. Her voice echoed unnaturally. "The spirit demands a sacrifice, and you will be it." Emma and Sarah tried to run, but the door slammed shut with a force that knocked them to the ground. Sister Margaret floated above them, her eyes burning with malice. "You will serve the spirit for eternity," she declared. The walls of the room seemed to close in on them, and the whispers grew louder surrounding them. In their terror, Emma remembered the symbols on their arms. She grabbed Sarah's hand and began to chant the symbols aloud. The air around them streamed, and the blinded light filled the room. The light pushed Sister Margaret back, her screams of anger filling the air. The spirit was being driven away by the power of the symbols. But it wasn't over. The spirit anger filled the room with a dark, suffocating mist. The guests felt themselves being pulled into the darkness, the screams echoing in the cold, oppressive mist. Just as they were about to lose hope, the light from the symbols on their arms flared up again, creating a protective barrier around them. The darkness hissed and roared, unable to break through the light. The guests hid to each other, chanting the symbols over and over, their voice trembling with fear. After what felt like an eternity, the darkness began to fade. The light grew stronger, pushing back to evil mist until it finally disappeared. The guests collapsed to the ground, exhausted and trembling. They looked around the room, which was now silent. Sister Margaret was gone, but they could still feel the lingering presence of the spirit. The gown lay in the center of the room untouched. "We need to get rid of this gown," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how?" Sarah asked, tears streaming down her face. "We have tried everything." Emma thought for a moment, then remembered the story her grandmother once told her about a sacred grave in the forest behind the school. It was said to be a place of great power, where evil spirits could be banished. "We will take it to the sacred grave," Emma said, determination in her voice. "It's our only chance." The guests wrapped the gown in a cloth and struck out of the room. They made their way through the dark, silent corridors of the school, avoiding any patrolling teachers. They reached the back door and quietly slipped outside. The night was dark and cold, and the forest loomed before them like a wall of shadows. They held hands and took a deep breath, then stepped into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around them as they walked deeper into the woods, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the sacred grave. It was a small clearing surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. They placed the gown in the center of the clearing and began to chant the symbols again. The air around them streamed, and a soft warm light filled the clearing. The ground beneath the gown began to tremble, and a deep rumbling voice echoed through the grave.
"Who dares to bring this cursed object to my sacred ground?"
The voice boomed. "We do," Emma said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We seek to banish the evil spirit that haunts us." The lights grew brighter, and the guests felt a powerful presence surrounding them. The ground split open beneath the gown, and a deep chasm appeared, swallowing it whole. The light flickered one last time, then faded, leaving the grave in peaceful silence. Emma and Sarah looked at each other, relief washing over them. The gown was gone, and with it the curse that had haunted them. But as they turned to leave, they heard a rustling in the trees. A figure stepped out of the shadows, its eyes glowing with a familiar light. "You cannot escape me," the figure whispered. "The spirit will find you no matter where you go." Emma and Sarah ran through the forest, their breath coming in rage gasps. The glowing figure followed them, its eyes burning with relentless smiles. The trees seemed to whisper and groan around them, adding to their terror. As they reached the edge of the forest, they saw the lights of the school in the distance. They pushed themselves to run faster, desperate to escape the evil that pursued them. They burst into the school grounds and made their way to their dormitory, locking the door behind them. That night, they barely slept. The whispers and shadows from the forest seemed to follow them into their dreams. They knew that the spirit was still out there watching and waiting. The next morning, Emma and Sarah decided they needed to face their fears head-on. They went to the headmistress, Mrs. Johnson, and told her everything that had happened. Mrs. Johnson listened carefully, her face growing grave. "Thank you for coming forward," Mrs. Johnson said. "We have to take this serious. I will contact the Reverend Sister Grace to help us deal with this situation." With Reverend Sister Grace's help, the school was cleansed of any remaining dark presence. The spiritual leaders performed the spiritual things to ensure the spirit could not harm anyone else. Emma and Sarah were grateful for their help and knew they had done the right thing by speaking up. The ordeal left them deeply shaken, but also wiser. They had learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of their actions and the importance of seeking help when faced with something beyond their control. The moral of this story was clear. Always be conscious of the choices you make, and remember that seeking help from others can often be the best way to overcome your fears and solve difficult problems. Emma and Sarah understood that their curiosity had led them into danger, but their bravery and honesty had helped them find a way out. From that day on, they focused on using their courage for good, helping others who were in need and never taking unnecessary risks. They learned that some secrets are better left uncovered and that true strength comes from facing your fears and seeking the support of those who care about you.
Thank you guys for watching my stories, and please come back for more. I love you.